Again, everyone, thank you for attending this webinar on change management. Before we begin, let's cover some logistics. On the GoToWebinar panel to your right, you're able to ask questions in which we will try to spend some time after the webinar to answer. We'll also be conducting a poll, so please look out for the poll question, which is also located in the panel. This webinar, as you all are aware, is a part of a series of ITIL webinars we're conducting this quarter. In the next webinar, we'll be covering problem management. And due to the attendance of these webinars, we may be expanding to a fourth webinar to cover asset management, so please stay tuned. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll follow up with you after to give you a link to the recording and a copy of the slides and additional material. As always, for the latest news and updates, please follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at TechExcel and at ServiceWisePM. We're really looking forward to expanding our social media and reaching out to everyone via these channels. So let's talk about today's agenda. We're going to be covering what change management is, some objectives of change management, different types of change, what is the change advisory board, how to handle emergency changes, and how change management is connected to other ITIL processes and other metrics and KPIs that are useful in change management. And lastly, the 7 R's of change. Then we'll follow it up by a short ServiceWise demo and, of course, questions at the end. So before we continue, let's take a quick survey on how many of us here have implemented change management. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll question. You should be able to see that in the panel. All right. And we're getting mixed results here. Okay. Still, it looks like people are populating. All right, we're going to go ahead and close this poll and share with you the results. So it looks like 47% is implementing some sort of change management. We have almost a little bit over 30% who aren't. So hopefully this webinar will help you decide on whether or not to implement change management. Okay, so what is change? Well, in the IT service business, change is anything that impacts IT infrastructure. For example, it can be a report that the email server is down or some kind of software upgrade. Requests or global change that affects more than one segment of IT operations include things like data center migration or a company-wide rollout of desktop replacements or operating system upgrades. So then change management is really a company's ability to take stock of its inventory and infrastructure and to ensure standardized procedures for handling changes with minimum risk to IT and to really improve day-to-day operations. Okay, moving on. The main aims of change management are really to have minimal disruption of services, reduction in backout activities, and utilization of resource involved in the change. So effective change management really gives an IT service department the ability to have a bird's eye view of the entire IT infrastructure, be able to manage and track requests for changes using standardized procedures, better assess the cost of changes before they're incurred, and to reduce the number of changes that are aborted or failed. And by doing so, we increase the productivity for personnel. In other words, we don't waste people's time. With the procedure in place, large volume of changes can be absorbed and handled systematically, thereby reducing risk. Another key aim of change management is to give customers an enhanced business perception of IT because they receive professional and process-oriented delivery of service. So there's really three types of changes, and each are handled differently. Standard changes are generally pre-approved and can be processed in a pre-established maintenance period or when there's not really any impact on the business. So small, frequent, trivial and easily understandable changes, it's possible to give acceptance in advance. And so the change is logged, but the change manager may not necessarily be involved in each specific case. So normal changes are managed according to by its category, either minor, significant, or major. And IT really defines these parameters and the authorization levels to apply. Urgent changes must be implemented as soon as possible, but in a controlled context of evaluation, testing, and authorization. So if absolutely necessary, every non-essential or non-technical stage of the change management process can be circumvented. But the procedures for such must be defined in advance. So the change manager can make decisions by himself, and testing and documentation can be done after the change. But it's important to note that all the shortcuts that you take must be evaluated afterwards. So some examples of a standard change include things like maybe updating the antivirus software, something very trivial, something common. Emergency changes might be, for example, a port in a switch, where it's gone down and a new switch needs to be installed immediately to restore the services. So here's a workflow that may be a little hard to see, but I'll show you how this works in practice later using ServiceWise. But ServiceWise does include a graphical workflow editor where companies may draw their process or this process into place. A couple key things to think about when implementing your process or workflow is really to make sure the description of change is clear. You identify who and what will be affected. You classify, prioritize, and plan changes in the order of their impact and urgency. Pretty much have to make sure a test plan is also in place, and target dates for the implementation should be noted so people are aware of any possible downtime. And often, it includes a backup plan should anything go wrong. And lastly, relevant documentation pertaining to the risk should be noted so authorities can make better decisions on whether or not to implement the change. So in the next few slides, I'll cover a general change process, but the first step really is to identify the change, whether it comes from an incident, upgrades to the infrastructure or changes in the business requirement that generate a need for a request for change, which is also known as an RFC. So an RFC is a proposed change request that should really include a complete description and the intent or purpose of the change. In addition, the person or department who requests the change should include information that describes who or what will be affected during implementation and after deployment. So this could include locations, departments, user groups, servers, and applications. A change manager is in place and is designated to be responsible for filtering out requests, determining priority, and categorizing what kind of change it is. And to categorize, he or she needs to determine the business impact the change would have. If it's a minor impact, change manager can authorize and schedule the change. If it is significant, they have to send the RFC over to an advisory board. But if it's a major change or a major impact, the change is always escalated to senior management for decision making. Okay, and so sometimes a CAB is involved. As mentioned, it's the advisory board, and its purpose is to advise the change manager after assessing and prioritizing the RFCs. A change manager can authorize or reject a change, and then the change is implemented. Release management kicks in to engage and to oversee testing, rollout, and planning. And configuration management team will be involved to really track new inventory and relationships as a result from the change. So a little bit more information on the CAB. So really it's an advisory board that's responsible to review all change requests and approve or deny each request based on the completeness, the readiness, business impact, and business needs and any other conflicts. They review each change in order to ensure all associated documentation is complete based on the risk level. Once a change has been approved, the advisory board is responsible for the communication of the change to all affected parties. Emergency CAB can be in place to where their primary role is to review and make decisions about emergency changes. So it's a subgroup of the CAB, and membership really is decided at the time a meeting is called, and really depends on the nature of the emergency change. Attendees vary within the CAB, and it depends on the changes to be considered. So CAB members really should have sound technical knowledge and really a good business perspective. The change manager really is the only permanent member on the board here. So needless to say, all CAB members really should be available after shift hours. So sometimes the situation may call for emergency change. For example, replacing a critical router that has suddenly stopped working. The emergency change is quickly convened to the CAB or the ECAB, and the change manager can authorize any other approval as the change needs to occur right away. But during this period, which all of you here probably experienced, may seem chaotic, but a process is still followed, and there is a defined escalation path and a checklist of things to do. So emergency changes in nature have higher risk. They follow an abbreviated process. So again, sometimes shortcuts are taken to get the change in place quickly. For example, minimal testing or lack of documentation, but these items are all revisited in greater detail afterwards and is reviewed in the next CAB meeting. So how does change management really fit within the ITIL framework? In incident management, all changes are addressed to the incident. They must route through change management. So for example, an employee may report ongoing performance issues he or she has with her desktop. The help desk will attempt to find workarounds, but a change is submitted because ultimately it's probably time to replace that 5-year-old desktop. And as we know, problem management really focuses on finding the root cause of issues. So let's just say multiple employees have reported that maybe after installing XYZ application, they experience BSODs. Then the problem management team eventually discovers that the problem is due to maybe incompatibility with the operating system, and it's really time to get everyone updated to Windows 7. It's also, though, not uncommon for the other way around, where problem management is used to identify and resolve issues that arise from the changes. Then, of course, we have availability management, which really just negotiates downtime and potential impact to availability. Release management really safeguards the production environment. So it's used to coordinate the rollout of changes and quality control, and implementing a change often requires some form of implementation, and release management is there to oversee testing, and etc. Configuration management, again, ties in with change management because it focuses on tracking and documenting configurations. So its process is to track relationships and to understand who's affected and assess the impact. So there's a few critical success factors for change management that's expected from various stakeholders. Some of these include, number one, to protect the business from any negative impact of change. Number two, facilitate the rate of change that the business needs. Number three, maybe provide knowledge and information about new changes. And number four, make efficient use of IT resources. So to demonstrate that you have achieved these CSFs, we call it, or how well you're doing against them, we have KPIs against each. So for example, if we take the CSF protected business from adverse impact of IT change, then some of these KPIs include, reduced number and percentage of changes that cause incidents, reduced total business impact of incidents caused by changes. But regardless, service-wise, we'll have all of these reports available to you to measure the effectiveness of your change management process. So lastly here, we have the 7 R's of change as defined by ITIL. So it's really a quick checklist of what things should be covered when raising a request for change. The list is pretty practical and really helps minimize change rejection at the time of logging. So things like who raised the change, what is the reason for the change, and of course the risk, the resources that are in the relationships that are all involved in this particular change. Okay, so that's just really a quick brief overview of change management through slides. So I'm going to kind of show you how change management works in ServiceWise. So I'm going to go ahead and close my slides. And let's go ahead and switch over to ServiceWise. So what you're looking at here is the ServiceWise admin. It's a place where we control all of our settings, define our business rules, and pretty much everything in the system. So there's a million settings in here, but I'm going to quickly show you, some settings and things that are related to change management. But before I begin, all of the departments are really separated by different projects inside ServiceWise. And so each project really is just a way to differentiate the departments in terms of having, different account types, customized forms, and workflow and business rules are specific to that department. So right out of the box, we have a couple ITIL focused projects. As you can see here, that's set up for incident management, change management, and problem management. So each of these, you'll see a different group of users and workflows specific to that ITIL process. So for example, if I switch over to incident management, not only will we look at, or we can define account types that are only specific to incident management, and also just take a quick look at the workflow, and of course other business rules that are defined throughout the admin for incident management. So the reason why I brought up incident management real quick is sometimes a change can happen and comes through from incident management. I'm going to show you how this works inside ServiceWise. So inside ServiceWise, we have this project called incident management where we have basically the help desk team working through tickets in this basic workflow. So we have a ticket that can traverse down into level 1 support, and they try to handle the issue, providing some workarounds, basically resolve the issue as fast as they can. Sometimes when they need help, they'll send it over to level 2 support, and then level 2 support provides a deeper analysis and maybe possibly resolve the issue. But oftentimes, though, there are things that help desk can't really do, and then so we draw the state called change requested. So what happens here is this is actually the key point where an incident actually becomes a change request. Okay, so during this state, actually you'll see in a second, is where a change, an RFC gets submitted and is implemented, and then it'll basically close out the incident once that RFC is done. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go into the web client now. Okay, in the web client, I'm actually logged in as a user who's has access across the board. So I can actually see all of these different projects, but we're going to go into incident management real quick here. And right here, we're just going to go ahead and create a new incident. And I'm going to submit an incident actually for an employee. So in this case, maybe I'll just put in Anna. And from here, I can select actually any assets that are impacted that are related to this issue that Anna is reporting about. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. basically I haven't selected any asset, but we're going to try to fill out the incident details as much as I can here. So maybe she's complaining about her computer running really slow, okay? And then she puts in a description saying, you know, I can't get any work done, whoops, because my apps are, I don't know, taking 5 minutes to load, something like that. So we'll have a pretty, you know, solid description there, as much data as possible, kind of categorize, set these priorities, and set these different fields, and kind of just realize that these fields that I have here are actually pertaining to incidents and not really to change management. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit continue here, and that workflow you just saw, basically where we have level 2 and, you know, request change, those are actually the actions that we can take from level 1. So we're going to go ahead and just send it over to maybe request a change immediately, because we know for sure, hey, after troubleshooting this incident, there's probably not much we can do about this. So we're going to go ahead and send a change, maybe to request for a new computer for Anna here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just, you know, the help desk team will just put in a brief work description here so that change management actually knows what's happening. So we're going to go ahead and hit save here. And what you'll see here actually is that step where a new change gets created into change management. So you can see right here by clicking that action request change, we're going to go ahead and generate a new RFC right into the change management project from incident management. So I'm going to go ahead and hit continue here. And if I just go ahead and look at my links here, I'll see that I still have my current incident along with the new change request. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and submit. And if I just take a quick look, just refresh my incident list here, I should now have, again, the ability to see the new change request and the status that's in change management. All right, so we have the incident plus a linked change request. So we're going to go back into the admin now and kind of take a look at why exactly I didn't put change management right into this workflow. Okay, so it might make sense now if I come into change management and show you the change management workflow that we have right out of the box. So we have this workflow where a new change gets submitted, okay, and then immediately it goes into acceptance. So somebody here, usually the change manager, will review this request and kind of determine if it's a significant request or if it's just a standard request where he can authorize and just go ahead and implement, okay? But for significant requests, we'll send it over to the advisory board where this CAB team will actually advise the change manager on what to do next. So they also have the ability, though, to reject the RFC and also to approve it, which will bring it to implementation. So once we have done that, we're able to send it over to QA testing. All right, and then from QA testing, if it is, you know, if it passes, then maybe it's time to roll it out for production. So we're going to go ahead and I kind of just really quickly drew the state, but to illustrate this workflow editor, I'm just going to go ahead and, you know, draw a line from rollout to production right to change completed. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say change completed or implemented. So it's as simple as that, and to really modify the workflow and to actually push out the settings right to the web. So there's no downtime, real easy configuration there. Point and click. And so now we're going to go ahead and, as my super user, we're going to go back into change management and take a look at what happened there. So here, from my list view, you can see that this is the new change that was submitted directly from the service team. Kind of as an example, I added a prefix so you can kind of tell it's actually from incident management. And basically the linked issue is displayed right below it. Okay, so when we go ahead and click on that, you're going to look at the details, and then you're going to see a much different set of fields that are available for change management. And so this is part of another reason why we actually created a different project for change requests versus just the incidents. So here we have a completely different set of fields that are specific for change requests, and actually we can add additional tabs. So if I wanted to do an impact analysis, I can create my own tab here and just put in my analysis right into these fields. Okay. More importantly, some of these business controls that I want to tell you about is, for example, this isn't enough information for anybody to make a decision on what to do with this change. What you do see, though, is that some of the basic information is copied over from incident management. And so ServiceWise has the ability to map different fields between the two projects. So I just want to point that out. But the business rules I was referring to is, for example, if I wanted to here make a call on determining whether it's a standard change or a significant change, by pressing this button, I'm going to go ahead and move it through the workflow. So when I hit save there, what happened is you see right away that we get a warning that, hey, this field hasn't been filled out. So how do you know it's a significant change? So really, ServiceWise enforces these business rules and makes sure that data is filled out correctly, etc., before you can actually move it to a different status. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out this service type here and kind of just fill out all the fields that are relating to the change management or the change request. And notice the employee here is still associated with Anna. I do have this assets tab where basically this tab will list out all of the assets that Anna currently possesses, and maybe any assets that are related to Anna's asset. Okay, and so from here we can kind of see all related items that may potentially have an impact, but that's what this assets tab is used for. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and really say, this is actually a significant change because not only do I have to update Anna's laptop or desktop, but I probably should do it for everybody's in the company. Maybe get everybody a solid state drive. I'm not sure. So we're going to go ahead and put it in a work description to update 7-year-old machine, something like that. We're going to go ahead and hit save, and whoops, again I have my fields that I totally forgot to save when I filled this out. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly do that. All right, I'm going to hit save, submit, just making sure. Okay, we're going to come back in here now. I'm going to say this is a significant change, and we're going to go ahead and hit save now. And notice these events that actually get created. So what this means is that when we move it over to CAB review, in that particular status, these items must be done in order to traverse through the workflow or into the next status. So right here, what happens is when I move it over to CAB, what really needs to happen is CAB will need a PSA document, which is really just a projected service availability report, which shows the effect of plan changes. And then also the change manager needs to approve as well. So we're going to go ahead and just say assign this to a different owner. So even though the change request is owned by a particular person, we can assign this to maybe a different person to be responsible for this document. And once they have it, they can attach it. And let's just say they have attached it. We're going to go ahead and close that out. Going to hit submit and close. And basically we have one of our events done. Okay, so now next is let's just make sure Terry Johnson, as the change manager, needs to go ahead and approve this request too. So he's going to go ahead and do so. He thinks this change makes sense, and so he wants the CAB team to know. So he's going to go ahead and hit submit. And what you see here is actually identity confirmation. So Terry Johnson actually needs to fill in his password as an e-signature to make sure that, hey, this is indeed him that's approving this request. We're going to go ahead and hit OK here. And another thing you're going to notice ServiceWise does is automation here, where another event kicks off based on completing these two events. So this event really now is for the CAB team Okay, so really once this event has been approved, then CAB can move it to implementation. So we're going to go ahead and hit continue here. And now we're going to hit, we look at the events tab just real quick, and then we'll see the 3 different events so far that have been created for just this particular request. Going to hit submit. Also in my list view, I have it configured so that I can see all open and closed events. So they're all listed here as well. We're going to go ahead now and take a look at what happens. I believe I have it set up so that if I go ahead and click on implement change, I think the system will stop me from moving to that status because I do have that approval event still open, which means CAB really hasn't approved of this change request. So I'm going to go back and make sure in the CAB right here, this particular event, we're going to go ahead and complete it. Go ahead and save and close. Another thing I wanted to show you too was throughout this whole process, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my email box here. So if you guys can see this, in my email actually there's a lot of notifications that's been happening. Okay, so we can configure notifications to happen on status changes or event creation, etc. But more importantly, we have this special type of notification where the team doesn't really have to log into the system to approve or reject anything. So if you look at this right here, this email basically has 2 links that if the user or the CAB team just clicks on, will automatically approve that request and potentially move it to the next status in the workflow. So ServiceWise does have that capability. So we're going to go ahead and actually do this manually. Now that I have everything closed, I'm going to go ahead and hit save here. Okay, and then now going to go ahead and take a look at or move this through the rest of the flow. So we're going to go ahead and implement the change. Along the way I can keep adding work descriptions to it, things that I'm doing with this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit submit here. And then now you'll see, depending on what type of change this is, it will actually generate an implementation task for the proper group. So I don't think I've actually categorized this correctly. So I have all 3 groups doing this particular change request. But really what's going to happen is this implementation request, now that this change request is in implementation, these are the tasks that need to be completed. Okay, and they can of course be auto-assigned to the owner that's responsible. So for example, if it's IT related, it could be Tim Simpson that's doing it. And more importantly, these states are actually different now. So it's not just approved and rejected, but now we have things like schedule, right? Or we can back out, or maybe we implement it successful. So this is totally configurable. But we're going to, hold off on talking about scheduling for a little bit. We'll come right back to that. So right now I'm just going to pretend we schedule this, and then we're going to hit submit. All right, and then that's about it. So as we're taking this change request through its workflow, a full audit trail is really seen here. So we can see all the different tasks, events that are accomplished or completed rather. And over in the history tab, we can kind of see everything that's happening. So full audit trail of what's happening on this change request. So that's pretty much it with the change request. Over on the left-hand side is this folder structure. So you kind of probably were wondering why there's a folder structure here. But basically, it's a way for us to categorize and group things or group similar change requests together. So for example, I can take maybe these 3 or 4 change requests that are kind of the same and just drag it into one of these folders, okay? Or actually I have set up these folders to represent, different projects that we want to do inside change management. So for example, I have IT service projects, maybe some applications, projects, or maybe if we're rolling out a new application, these are all the things that we want to do, and then maybe it contains tasks underneath. So it's just a way for us to group up projects and to categorize different, basically different change requests. Also acts as a filter too. So if I click on here, it should display all of the change requests that are part of the server group. More importantly, though, here is I kind of want to talk a little bit about these projects and how you can kind of plan for them and kind of schedule things out. So if we look at any sub-project here and we click on Edit, there's actually a plan start and plan finish date. So we can always, for any project, set a start and finish date. And what that does for us is over on the planning view side of things, okay, I'm going to actually show less data here. Okay. And really we can see the projects listed out as a Gantt chart. So those start and end dates that you saw actually transferred right into the Gantt here. So any projects that we have that are ongoing, we can kind of see when it's planned for. And of course, you know, instead of just manually putting in a start date and end date from the change request list view, we can do it right in here. So we can do things like maybe drag out, you know, this project to happen a little bit later. We can draw dependencies between projects. And then if you see this little green bar in the middle, actually represents a progress of a project. So at any time I can go ahead and either, you know, do it graphically, plan graphically, or I can still continue to edit these sub-projects. So I can kind of manage the start and end dates in here as well. Looking at this also too is that earlier, if you notice what I did was I actually showed you know, more things than just these sub-projects. So I can actually show any of those tasks that I've created or even approval requests. They might not make sense, so I'm just going to go ahead and show you implementation. So what I mean by this is that not only do these sub-projects have a start and end date, so these change request projects have, you know, a plan start and plan finish, but the change requests themselves also have it. So if you chose not to use sub-projects, you can always do it at the change request itself. Okay, so they all have that ability to track the time. Over here, though, we also have this resource management, where for any project, and let's see if I have any data here, overall, we can kind of see all of my resources and kind of see all the tasks that they're really been working on. So you can kind of use this to schedule out your changes. Okay. And lastly, I wanted to show you this calendar view. And so the calendar view basically displays, of course, you know, just a simple calendar, and it actually displays any planned implementation. So right here I got, maybe if I show less data, it'll look a little cleaner. And so you can see, actually, I can look at the calendar. Anyone or any employee can actually take a look at this calendar and kind of see any planned outages or any planned changes for that time. All right, so that's kind of all I wanted to show you real quick inside ServiceWise. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up for questions. And thanks for watching this. Okay, so let me find out questions. Okay, I'm having a problem looking at the questions for some reason, but here we go. Yeah, so somebody asked, what version of ServiceWise was this demo? Basically, this is the latest version, 9.3.1. And basically what we do is we release monthly patches for ServiceWise. And let me just kind of, there's a lot of questions coming in, so I'm gonna come up and down this list here. So will this presentation be available after the webinar in form of a PDF? And the answer to that is yes. Can you view the calendar screen on a daily, weekly basis rather than a quarterly one? Yep, you can. So if you look at the top here, we have day, week, and month. Over on the planning view, the same thing. All right, so I can kind of zoom in, zoom out, so we can do that. And our problem in change management add-ons to ServiceWise, and answer to that is no. They're not add-ons. They're right out of the box. Again, you can configure any kind of project that you want inside ServiceWise. We just happen to have some of these idle processes implemented. Is the planning view and the calendar view part of ServiceWise? And answer to that is yes. So the calendar view is part of ServiceWise. Planning view is separate, and it comes with project plan. Okay. And another question came in about how does ServiceWise integrate with DevSuite? That's a really good question. But essentially, what I showed you with the inter-project copying, with the incidents copying over to change requests, it'll be the same thing. It'll be, instead of copying into a different ServiceWise project, it'll copy into a DevTrack project, for example. Okay, so does ServiceWise also have an incident management and asset management as well? Yes. So earlier I just told you that incident management is included as a standard template. Asset management is not. Actually, it comes with what we call AssetWise, and then we'll be doing that demo or webinar for that in the upcoming month here. When you showed the manager approving via email, did that manager have to be a licensed user? That's a very good question. So no, the user does not need to have any sort of license. Anybody with that link should be able to go ahead and approve and reject. Most of our help desk tickets are of the simple variety with a small technical staff. Is this software geared more towards larger enterprises or more complex data centers or projects? Well, not really. The good thing about ServiceWise is that, you know, it's flexible and it's scalable. So, you know, you can have a really simple process, a really clean, small workflow just to get you through help desk. It's not a problem. And you can expand into something like what I just showed you with all of the different business rules, a whole completely different workflow, etc. for change management. Another question came in is there functionality that will allow several users to approve a change through the email link? And the answer to that is yes. One of the projects was HR onboarding. Can ServiceWise do this also? Answer to that is yes. ServiceWise can really implement any process that you have, and that's one of the strong points about it. So any process you have, you can kind of just build out your own workflow doing that point and click thing. Do resources assigned to tasks require a license to update their task status? Yeah, actually, everybody that's working in this portal here requires a license, and the license really allows you to make changes to the change requests, the tasks, and to really update things within ServiceWise here. Can new changes be opened by email? And can email content be automatically formatted into CM fields like forms? Answer to that is yes. So one thing I didn't show you today is that ServiceWise has email submission, where it's just an email service that's constantly scanning an inbox, and it does have the ability to parse out emails based on their contents to map the fields directly into the forms. Okay, so maybe we can show that. And another thing I wanted to tell you guys too is this is a real brief demo. So if you guys wanted to see this in all its glory, then please don't hesitate to contact us. So what kind of change reporting is available in the tool, and is ServiceWise compatible with Crystal reports? And that's a very good question. So out of the box, ServiceWise offers about 100 plus reports that's totally customizable. Unfortunately, I just didn't have the chance to set up some of those reports, and it is compatible with Crystal reports. Okay. And let's see, there is a couple more questions here. We're getting a lot of questions. I'm kind of just scanning through them. Okay. Okay. I think I answered most of the questions I can over this webinar. So if you have any other questions, or if I didn't get back to you here, I am going to make sure that they're answered and sent to you via email. And again, thank you guys for joining this webinar, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.